Welcome back to the channel, where today's story is one that is sure to surprise and intrigue you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share this story with anyone who's been through the roller coaster of complicated relationships. It all started a few years ago when I met Sarah, a confident and ambitious woman who captured my attention from the moment we met. We dated casually at first, both of us enjoying the freedom and simplicity that came with not having to define anything. But over time it became clear that I wanted more. I saw a future with Sarah, and as our relationship grew, so did my feelings for her. One evening, after months of thoughtful consideration, I decided it was time to take the plunge. I had everything planned out, from the perfect restaurant to the ring that I had spent weeks saving for. I was ready to ask her the one question that would change both of our lives. At dinner, as we sat across from each other, I could feel my heart racing. I told her how much I loved her, how she had changed my life for the better, and how I could imagine no future without her by my side. Her eyes softened as I nervously pulled out the ring, asking her the big question, "Will you marry me?" Her reaction wasn't what I expected. She sat there, her eyes filled with hesitation, and after what seemed like an eternity, she said no. The words stung more than I had anticipated. She told me that she wasn't ready for marriage, that she needed more time, and that she didn't feel the same way about me. I was crushed. The person I had imagined my future with was not as sure about me as I was about her. Took a while for me to process everything. I had always been a believer in fighting for what you want, so I gave her some space, hoping that time would change her mind. But when I proposed again a few months later, she rejected me once again. This time I couldn't ignore the reality. If she didn't see a future with me, then maybe I had been fooling myself. I decided it was time to move on. I ended the relationship, heartbroken but resolute. It was difficult, but I knew it was the right thing to do. 4 months after, I threw myself into work, distancing myself from any thoughts of Sarah. Slowly, I began to heal, learning to enjoy my own company and focusing on the things that made me happy. I didn't expect Sarah to ever reach out again. After all, she was the one who rejected me twice. But to my surprise, a year later, I received a message from her. She wanted to meet. I wasn't sure how to feel. Part of me still carried the hurt from her rejections, but I was curious. What could she possibly want now, after everything that had happened? I agreed to meet, never imagining what would unfold next. After receiving Sarah's message, I wasn't sure what to expect. The hurt from our breakup was still fresh in my mind, but I couldn't deny the curiosity. It had been a year since we'd parted ways, and in that time I'd grown a lot. I'd learned to be comfortable with myself, to find happiness without relying on someone else, and most importantly, I had moved on. Yet, despite all that, Sarah's message stirred something in me. Part of me still wondered why she rejected my proposal twice. Was it something I did? Or was it simply that she wasn't ready for a commitment at all? We decided to meet at a small cafe, a place that held some of our best memories. I arrived early, trying to prepare myself mentally for what would come next. I wasn't sure if I wanted closure, answers, or just to finally be done with it all. But I knew that this conversation would either solidify my decision to move on for good, or bring up emotions I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. When Sarah walked in, she looked different yet the same. Her expression was softer, more mature, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. She took a seat across from me, her hands nervously folding and unfolding on the table. I could sense that she was hesitant, unsure of how to start. After a few awkward moments, she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I've thought about you a lot these past months. And I've realized a lot about myself. About us." I didn't interrupt, allowing her the space to express whatever she needed to say. I was ready to listen, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive. "I was scared," she continued. "When you proposed, I wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. I wasn't sure about myself or what I wanted in life. I thought I was too young, too uncertain. And when you proposed again, I realized that I wasn't being fair to you. You deserved someone who was sure, and I wasn't." I took a deep breath, processing her words. Part of me wanted to feel angry, to tell her how much her rejections hurt, but I also understood what she was saying. Life isn't always about the right time. Sometimes it's about the right person, and maybe she just wasn't that person for me. But then she dropped a bombshell. "I've changed," Sarah said, her gaze shifting from my eyes to the coffee cup in her hands. "I realize now that I do want a future. I want it with you. I've spent the last year regretting what I let go. I've learned so much, and I want to make things right." Her words hit me like a wave, but I wasn't sure how to respond. A part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that time had changed everything, but another part of me couldn't ignore the fact that she had rejected me twice before. How could I trust her now? "I'm not the same person I was when we broke up," Sarah continued. "I know I hurt you and I regret it. But I'm asking for another chance to build something real this time. To work through everything together." I was conflicted. I had moved on, built a life without her, and yet here she was, asking for a second chance. The idea of rekindling a relationship after everything that had happened seemed almost impossible. But there was a lingering part of me that still cared for her, the part that never truly let go. Had to decide. Could I trust her again? Was I willing to take the risk of opening myself up to the possibility of being hurt again? Before I could respond, Sarah added, "I understand if you don't feel the same way. I know I messed up. But I just needed to tell you what's been on my mind. I needed to come clean." As I sat there, thinking through everything she had said, I realized that this wasn't just about whether I could forgive her. It was about whether I could forgive myself for still caring after everything we'd been through. The meeting ended with neither of us offering a definitive answer. We parted ways, but my mind was racing. Could we truly start over, or had the damage already been done? After that cafe meeting, I couldn't get Sarah's words out of my head. The entire drive home, I kept replaying our conversation over and over. The hope in her voice, the apology, and the regret. It all felt so genuine, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she might just be saying what she thought I wanted to hear. Could I trust her again? Could I really open myself up to the possibility of another heartbreak? For weeks I went back and forth. Every time I thought I had made up my mind, another part of me would doubt the decision. My friends were split on the matter. Some thought I should give her another chance. After all, people do change. But others, including my brother, advised against it. "Don't be a fool," he'd said. "She rejected you twice, and now that she's alone, she comes crawling back. What does that say about her?" I couldn't ignore the truth in his words. Stung, but it was clear. My love for Sarah had always been real, but her actions had never aligned with the love I thought we shared. I had given her my heart, and twice she turned it away. I needed to focus on myself. I needed to stop thinking about what might be and start thinking about what was best for me. But the more I tried to push Sarah out of my mind, the more she seemed to invade my thoughts. I'd been alone for a year, but I had learned to appreciate my own company. I'd learned what I wanted from life, from a partner, and from a relationship. But could I really just let go of the one person who had meant everything to me at one point? Then I received a letter from Sarah. I hadn't expected it, and when I opened it, my heart sank. In her handwriting, she poured her heart out, explaining everything she hadn't been able to say in person. She apologized again, acknowledging the mistakes she made and how she regretted hurting me. She wrote about how much she had grown, how she realized that the love I had for her was the kind of love she had always wanted but had been too afraid to accept. The letter ended with a simple request. "Please, give me a chance to prove that I'm not the same person who walked away from you. If you can't forgive me, I understand. But if there's even a small part of you that believes we could work, I'd be forever grateful." Reading those words, I was torn. It wasn't just a plea for forgiveness. It was a plea for the future we never had. The future that I had once imagined so clearly. But now everything felt different. Could I allow myself to trust her again? Could I open up to her when I had been burned so deeply before? And if I did take her back, what would that mean for my personal growth? Would I be holding myself back, or could this be the fresh start we both needed? The days that followed were filled with sleepless nights, endless conversations with friends, and a lot of self-reflection. I needed to understand what I truly wanted before making a decision that would change the course of my life. Could I be the person who gave Sarah the chance to redeem herself? Or would I be the person who walked away, never looking back? At the end of the day, I realized that no matter how much I cared for her, this decision couldn't just be about love. It had to be about respect, for myself and for the person I had become. I had learned to love myself more than I ever had before, and I wasn't sure I was willing to risk that. As the days went by, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Sarah's letter weighed on my mind more than I cared to admit. Every word seemed sincere, and I couldn't deny that a small part of me wanted to believe in her change. The idea of picking up where we left off was tempting. After all, there had been a time when I truly believed we were meant to be. But that thought was quickly overshadowed by the reality of the past. I couldn't forget the way she had walked away twice. I couldn't ignore the hurt and the feeling of abandonment that I had carried for so long. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the feeling that I hadn't been enough. That no matter how much I loved her, it wasn't enough to make her stay. It wasn't just about the pain either. It was about the time I had lost. The year I had spent rebuilding my life, my self-esteem, and my own sense of worth. I had discovered a lot about myself in that year of solitude. I had learned to be comfortable on my own, and I had found peace in knowing that I didn't need someone else to complete me. I was whole on my own. But Sarah's letter made me question everything I had built. Could I give up the life I had created to go back to someone who might break my heart again? Could I risk everything for the chance of a second chance at love? I began to talk to people who knew Sarah and me, and the advice was mixed. Some told me that second chances were rare, but they could be beautiful if both people were truly committed to change. Others told me I was being naive and that once someone walked away, they would always walk away when things got tough. I took a long walk one evening, reflecting on everything that had happened. The past, the hurt, and the uncertainty of the future. It was clear to me that Sarah had grown and was asking for forgiveness, but I also knew that forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. Could I forgive her and move forward? Or was I setting myself up for another heartbreak? I thought about the life I had now, the friends I had made, the way I had found happiness in solitude, and the dreams I had been able to pursue without being held back. The idea of giving all of that up for someone who had once abandoned me seemed reckless. But love is never clear-cut, and the heart doesn't always listen to reason. The tipping point came one evening when Sarah called me. It was the first time I had heard her voice in over a year. She asked if we could meet, and after much deliberation I agreed. This was the moment where I would finally have to make a decision. We met at the same cafe where we had shared so many memories. It was a strange feeling, sitting across from her once again. She looked different, more mature, more aware of the gravity of what she had done. There was no arrogance, no defensiveness, just a woman who had spent a year reflecting on the mistakes she had made. "I know you've heard everything I have to say in that letter," Sarah began, her voice soft but full of sincerity. "But I need you to know that I've changed. I'm not asking for you to forgive me immediately. I just want the chance to prove to you that I am not the person I was when I left. I'm asking for a fresh start, not just for us but for myself." I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, and for the first time I believed that she was being honest. She had made mistakes, and she knew it. But was it enough? Was it enough for me to risk everything I had worked for in the last year? "I've spent a lot of time thinking about this," I said, my voice steady. "And I've learned a lot about myself. I don't know if I can go back to the way things were. But I also don't know if I'm ready to close that door completely." Sarah nodded, her expression a mix of relief and uncertainty. "I understand," she said quietly. "I don't expect you to make any decision today. Just know that I'm here. Whenever you're ready, we can talk more." After our meeting, I knew the decision had to come from within. I couldn't base my decision solely on Sarah's changes. I had to think about what was best for me. It wasn't about whether I loved her. It was about whether I had grown enough to let go of the past and embrace the future. And in that moment, I realized that I was stronger than I had been before. I had built a life for myself that I was proud of. I didn't need Sarah to complete me, But I also didn't need to close the door on what we once had. The truth was, I wasn't ready to give up on the love we shared, but I also wasn't ready to let it control my life. After our conversation at the cafe, I spent days wrestling with my thoughts. Part of me longed to believe in the possibility of a second chance, to return to the love we once shared. Another part of me feared that I would only be setting myself up for another heartbreak. I reached out to a few close friends for advice, each of them offering their own perspective on the situation. Some of them believed in the power of second chances, reminding me that people could change. Others warned me that history had a way of repeating itself, especially when the trust had already been broken. The one thing that stood out was how much I had changed during the year we had been apart. I had grown stronger, more independent, and more in touch with my own desires and goals. I had finally started to live life on my own terms. The idea of returning to a relationship that had once been my entire world felt both comforting and terrifying. It was like opening a door to a past that I wasn't sure I was ready to revisit. One evening I decided to clear my head by going for a walk. The cool breeze helped to calm my nerves as I walked through the park, reflecting on the choices I had made over the past few months. I thought about the hurt, the heartache, but also about the joy and peace I had found since I left Sarah. As I sat on a bench overlooking the lake, I realized something important. I wasn't the same person I was when we first broke up. I had learned to value myself, my happiness, and my peace of mind. I had grown into someone who didn't need validation from anyone else to feel complete. I wasn't sure if I could go back to the old dynamic we once had. The love we shared was real, but so was the pain I had experienced. Could I risk falling back into that cycle? I pulled out my phone and read through the messages Sarah had sent me in the past week. Each one was thoughtful and apologetic, showing that she understood the gravity of what she had done. I could feel her sincerity, but the truth was, I didn't know if I could trust her again. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. I decided that I needed more time to think. I needed to be sure that I wasn't just responding to my emotions or the lingering remnants of love that still existed between us. I needed to make a decision that was in the best interest of my future, not just in the moment. The next day I called Sarah. My heart was racing as I dialed her number. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew it was time to take the next step. When she picked up, I could hear the nervousness in her voice. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I'm not sure what I want yet, but I think it's time for us to meet again. I need closure before I can make any decisions." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Sarah spoke again. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes for you to get the answers you need. Just let me know when you're ready." It was in that moment that I realized something important. I didn't need to make any rash decisions. There was no rush. I could take my time to figure out what was best for me. It was about healing not just for Sarah but for myself as well. Few days later we met again. This time it was different. I wasn't approaching the situation with a sense of hope or desperation. I was calm and collected, prepared to listen but also to assert my boundaries. I had made peace with the idea that, no matter what happened, I would be okay. We talked for hours, revisiting the past and exploring what had gone wrong. Sarah admitted that she had made a huge mistake and that she had never fully appreciated what we had. She was truly sorry for how she had treated me, and she wanted nothing more than to prove that she could be the partner I deserved. But despite her heartfelt words, I couldn't help but feel conflicted. I had heard all this before. The promises, the apologies, the vows to change. Could I really trust that she had changed, or was I setting myself up for more disappointment? By the end of our conversation, I made a decision. It wasn't an easy one, but I knew it was the right choice for me. I couldn't go back to the relationship we once had. Not because I didn't love Sarah, but because I had learned that I needed to love myself first. I couldn't lose myself in someone else again. "I think it's time for us to move on," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I need to let go, and I think you do too. It's time to move forward separately." Sarah's face fell, and for a moment I saw the hurt in her eyes. But there was also a sense of understanding. She knew that this was the only way for both of us to truly heal. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'll always love you, but I understand." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew I had made the right choice. It was time for both of us to let go of the past and embrace the future. Thanks again for all your support. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for the next chapter in this journey.